Hey folks, so I wanted to take some time today and talk a bit about sensitivity. I want to share my sensitivity story with you guys. Um, this video is for you if you are a sensitive person. I want to relate to you today. I want to share my story in hopes that it gives you courage to share your story around what it means to be a highly sensitive person. Yeah, so essentially, there's a term called highly sensitive person, and it's makes up about 20% of the world population are more on the sensitive spectrum. There's obviously different severities of people. Well, I don't want to even say severities, but different levels of people being sensitive and being less sensitive in that continuum as well. So I would definitely classify myself as highly sensitive. And on more of the extreme side of the sensitivity. And it was something I struggled with pretty much my whole life until probably the last 3-4 years. I've started to learn how to work with my sensitivity in a way that it has actually become one of my greatest strengths and one of my best assets, and how I've built my business and these sorts of things. So I would love to share my journey with you guys, and also hear from you guys in possibly, what has your journey been like in this area, because I know there's so many sensitive people in this world, and they're so beautiful, and their sensitivity is so beautiful, and yet we hide this part of ourselves because we don't want people to see us as sensitive, because we've somewhere along the way we learned that our sensitivity is a weakness. So what I want to share is just a little bit about my journey and how my sensitivity impacted me growing up, and maybe you'll find a little bit of yourself in my story. So here goes. So growing up for me was definitely challenging. I felt things extremely deep, and I had a lot of intensity in my feelings. I would say my life was also joyful, right? I had a lot of great memories and experiences as a child, and so I don't want to paint the picture of being a victim or being that my life was horrible. It wasn't at all. But I do feel like my childhood and my teenage years were overshadowed by suffering, more so than joy, and it was because of this, and because of just navigating different things, that being sensitive actually made these experiences harder for me. So I definitely I remember being younger and having just a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, and a lot of feelings. And I didn't realize until I was a bit older and learned the term empath, that I realized that I was actually an empath, and my sensitivity was directly connected to being an empath. And we have to have a certain level of sensitivity to be an empath. And for people that don't know what an empath is, it's basically somebody who feels other people's feelings. We can feel the intensity of other people's feelings, and we can feel them as if they're our own. And for a lot of people that are young and sensitive, and they don't have the skill set to be able to discern what's theirs and what's others, it can be very confusing. It can cause a lot of anxiety. It can cause a lot of fear, because we're not sure why we're feeling the things that we're feeling. And so there was that aspect of things, and then there was the aspect of growing up gay. So I had two really interesting things that I was navigating that I did not know, like my sexuality, my sensitivity. They ended up being these two kind of things that just like were burdens. They hung on my shoulders, like so weighted, and I felt like that's probably why I suffered through life, as I was trudging through the trenches of life, like with these big heavy weights on my shoulders, and not really understanding why I was feeling this way. So I remember having the experiences of being a child and walking by homeless people, or even handicapped people, or people that were just in pain and suffering, and people that were alone and lonely. I would feel this stuff, and it would make me want to cry. And I remember there was times where I would cry, and I would feel so heavy, like walking downtown in Calgary as a child with my aunt and seeing homeless people, and I just would start to cry. And my family all know that I'm a very sensitive person, and I recently asked my mom and dad both, how if I was sensitive as a child, and if how they knew that, and they told me some hilarious stories that are funny now, but as a child it was like, it was so real and so scary for me to have these experiences. But looking back, it was like, just, my mom would be like, oh, you would like rescue like the ladybug that was wounded, and you'd be like crying that it was wounded and things like this. And it's really cute, because when I see people that are like that now, I'm just like, oh, my heart is in love with these people, because they're just so kind and gentle and nurturing. But when you're in that energy as a highly sensitive person, it's heavy, and you feel like the world's judging you, and you feel like you need to always hide who you are. So this is the experience that I had. And one of the most traumatic ongoing experiences that I had as a child was going to school in grade 1 and 2. And I had a lot of separation anxiety, because my sensitivity was nurtured or protected by my mom and my dad, and the safety of being in family system. So when it came time to leave the nest of that aspect of things and go into grade 1 and 2, every single day for 2 years, and my mom can attest to this, was so painful for both of us going through this. But I would have a ton of anxiety in the morning. I would be like sick to my stomach. I would get in the car, we would drive, and I just knew it was going to happen. And I would get out of the car, I would start walking to the school door, and I would look back, and I would panic, and I would run back to my mom crying. And this went on for 2 years, and my mom was traumatized by it. I was traumatized by it. We didn't know how to deal with it. And it was the fact that the school was scary for me. I felt other people's stuff. All the other little kids were, thinking all their little kid thoughts, which were judgmental and mean, and I could feel them all. And it was just this big, scary world for me. And so I quickly learned to, I didn't even really learn. I just crumbled under it, actually, is what happened. I became very emotional, and very afraid of a lot of things in life. And this kind of really set the template for my life and moving forward. And this is why I am such a spiritual person, and why I've done such deep work, because I had a ton of suffering in my earlier years, and a ton of that suffering created conditioning and programming for me that I've had to undo. And moving through these experiences that I've moved through as a young adult have helped me, develop these skills to be able to turn my sexuality into a strength, to be able to turn my sensitivity into a strength, and be able to turn my addiction into a strength. And that's another aspect of this being highly sensitive, is when we feel things so intensely and so much, we're always looking for ways to escape, right? Ways to just stop the feeling. I don't want to feel anymore. And one of the ways for me was addiction, and drugs and alcohol and sex and all these things. And by the age of 17, I was addicted to crack, and I had a crack addiction from the age of 17 to 24, and and just did a ton of damage to myself in that area, and quickly learned how to repress my feelings and shut them off. And and then from 25 onward till now, I'm 35, so 10 years, I've been relearning how to feel, and I've been relearning how to navigate my empathy and my sensitivity and these sorts of things. So it's been quite the journey, and I'm at a place now where I'm like, what? This is a really awesome transformation that I've made, and this is a really awesome life that I've lived, to be able to share my story and to be able to help people along this journey of navigating their sensitivity and their intense feelings and their intrusive and invasive thoughts. Like it all comes with the territory of being sensitive, but there's also this beautiful aspect of sensitivity and what it means for us and why we've been put on this planet, right? 20% of us living on this planet are highly sensitive. So that tells us that we're needed. We're needed in 1/5 of helping humanity shift and move into a different type of consciousness. And I take my role very seriously, and being a light worker, I use these skills to my advantage. But I've also had to learn what to stay away from and what to move towards. And I'm going to be talking all about that in different videos and different content on my Instagram. I'm not going to get into that today because that's going to be more of like a clinical approach to this work. And today I'm just sharing a personal approach to this work, and I want to keep it at that today, so I can just talk a bit about myself and share a bit about my story. So so my common experience was a ton of anxiety, was a ton of overstimulation. Everything stimulates me, and even still to this day, if I go to a concert or a party or something like that, or any loud noises, kids screaming, dogs barking, things like that, it just throws me off, and it just sends this like irritation in my body, and I just can't handle it. So I'm very much a cat energy. I'm feline energy more than canine energy. I'm just like slinky. I move slow. I talk quite quick, but my energy is a lot more calm. And this is again something I've had to learn about myself and what I need to move towards and what I need to stay away from when it comes to what is good for me. So being an empath and having the ability to be able to feel people's feelings, one of the things that really became almost pathological in my life was this idea of people pleasing. Because if I could feel people's disappointment, because I can feel people's feelings, then I would do anything to not have to feel people's disappointment, because I couldn't shut it off. It would come at me like a freaking ton of bricks. So I learned very quickly to mold myself and shape myself into who people needed me to be, so I didn't have to experience their disappointment or their disapproval or their judgment or their criticism. So I developed a really strong fear to these things, and the people pleasing was the mechanism that I used to avoid these things. So I made sure that I always was funny, that I always would only bring forth these aspects of myself that I thought people would desire, that I would be a pleaser in my intimate relationships. And this quickly pulled me away from my authenticity, because when we're people pleasing, we're fitting in, right? We're conforming to what others need us to be instead of belonging, which is owning who you are and you belong. And so the people pleasing stuff became really, really problematic in my life. It developed into and turned into codependency in my relationships. It turned into managing other people's feelings, being needed by other people, making other people's feelings more important than mine. I am a child of divorce, so my parents went through a really rough time when I was around 7, 8, 9, 10. And I learned very quickly to make their emotions more important than mine, specifically my mom's, and took on her stuff, felt her stuff. It was very intense. So again, part of my journey as being a highly sensitive man is been learning how to be authentic and own my feelings and set boundaries with people that are in my life that I feel like are a little bit too intense or maybe not a good fit to be in my life anymore. I had to really do some soul searching in this area and take inventory of who I was spending my time with and how these people were helping or hindering my development and my spiritual path. And that was a really hard thing for me to do, is moving away from people. As I stepped into my authenticity and got better at setting boundaries, I had to start setting up the boundaries around who do I want in my life. And that is really tough, because there's a grieving process that comes with people being in your life and not wanting them in your life anymore, because they're no longer a fit. They don't serve your life's purpose anymore. So it was really challenging for me. And then also rejecting people has been painful for me too, because I can feel the feelings associated with what they're feeling when they're rejected. So my life became about making other people more important than me, because other people reflected back to me their feelings, and then I minimized my own feelings and made theirs more important. So it became like a vicious cycle, and it was destroying me. It was causing me to have anxiety, and there was a lot of internalized shame, things like that I was coping with throughout my adolescent into my teens. So it was really challenging. So that kind of paints a little bit of a picture of the story of my life in sensitivity. But I do want to kind of bring it fast forwarded up to like kind of where I'm at with my sensitivity and my sexuality and these aspects of myself now, because I've made the full transformation. And this is in the last, I would say really, really specifically and heavy in the last 2 years, but it started probably 4 years ago, this transformation of really stepping into like my authenticity and owning who I am and not making other people more important than me. And basically a lot of that happened through working with guides. I started to do a ton of spiritual work. When I was in Asia, I developed a really strong practice to work with spirit guides. And I realized that I had several guides and angels that I was actually, that were in part of my life since I was born, but I've never actually been able to communicate with them and work with them. And now I'm able to access this spiritual world and work with it, and it's been so profound. And in the last year or two, I've turned my empathy into clairsentience, which is almost just kind of like empathy on steroids, basically. And clairsentience has a psychic ability connected to the empathy, which is the ability to be able to feel other people's feelings, but also know where the feeling is coming from. Because for most of my life, I would feel either thought form energy, which comes out as feeling, and I would feel the feeling, but I would have no idea what it was attached to, why it was there. I just could feel the density of that feeling. And now I have the ability to be able to feel the density of the feeling, but able to kind of backtrack and understand where this feeling is coming from. Is it coming from this person feeling or thinking these sorts of thoughts and feelings? So it's been really cool to develop this, but it takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of being present, because what ends up happening is, I even have days where I'm feeling too much and it's heavy. But when you develop this into a skill, you're able to turn it up and turn it down. And I can turn up my clairsentience in my coaching sessions, and I can turn it down when I go to a social event. So I'm not picking up on everybody's stuff around me. So I've really, really crafted and learned these skills in a way that served me now. But when I was just rolling on the roller coaster, it was exhausting, because I would have days where I felt on top of it and I felt really confident and strong. And then I had days where I was sucked into the slums of my mind and of other people's minds and of other people's feelings and the density that brings up. And it became very painful and very heavy. And then when I'm picking up people's energies, and before I didn't have the ability to clear my energetic field, I became almost like this dense, heavy ball of emotions walking around, not knowing what was mine and what was others. And that's a problem, and it becomes a problem, and it can create disease, it can create mental illness, it can create all these things, because we're full. We don't have capacity for love, joy, abundance, all the things that we want, peace, inner peace. It clouds us. And what we need to learn is we need to learn how to cleanse our field, right? That's the first thing. When we're working with people or talking with people or anything, any interactions with others, we need to come back to self. We need to connect to self, and we need to cleanse. So I use crystals, I use essential oils, I use magnets, I use my guides, I use movement. There's all sorts of practices, smudging, like you can use so many different things to help do this. And when you start to develop a practice of cleansing, your skill set, your ability, it intensifies, because your guides or the universe or whatever you believe in is going to be like, okay, sweet, you now know how this works. So we're going to intensify it for you, and we're going to bring it into, and when it's intensified, it doesn't mean it's intensified in the density solely. It means it's intensified in all the beauty that it brings as well. And when you learn how to work with it, the beauty just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you realize that, holy shit, I'm so gifted and I have these abilities. And you can really do some beautiful work in this world when you start to work with what you think is a burden, but you start to turn it into a strength. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm doing coaching and it's more so intuitive coaching. I call it transformative life coaching, but it's intuitive coaching. I work with people. I reflect back to them why they're having the thoughts and feelings that they are and what they need to do to clear them. And I teach people how to work with their empathy, their sensitivity, to develop self-worth, all of these things because of my sensitivity. I can feel into what they're feeling because I'm sensitive and I'm perceptive and observant, and I can reflect that back to them. So I've built a successful business around this burden that I carried for so long. I turned it into gold, right? And that's what I'm on this planet to do, is to teach other people how to do the same. So it's an exciting time in my life. I feel like I'm the most authentic and the most strong that I've ever been, and I'm also the most sensitive I've ever been. I'm like, sometimes I walk around, I'm just this ball of sensitivity. I can pick up on every single thing. But now that I have the skill set to be able to work with it, I see it as a gift. My skin is no longer too thin. It's perfect. It allows me to access things that some other people can't. And, being a 20%er, it really gives me an advantage in certain areas, but it also, there's some disadvantages as well. Like I can't drink alcohol. I can't smoke cigarettes. I can't eat sugar. I can't have random sex. I can't eat spicy foods. There's so many things that I'm limited to that other people get to do. And it was hard for me in my 20s because I envied the fact that people could just go out and get fucking wasted on the weekend and be recovered the next day. And if I do it, I'm like in bed for 3 days trying to manage the anxiety that comes up for me after it, right? So I know my limits. I know the parameters I have to operate within in order to be successful. And sometimes that happens through trial and error, because most of my 20s were dedicated to partying, and I was always out of balance. And I was always in my mind and suffering with anxiety in my mind. And now that I've developed this relationship with my body, which is where my clairsentience lives, it's in my body, it's not in my mind. I'm so much better off because of it. So yeah, I think that's the main parts that I wanted to share with you guys today. I don't want to make this video too long, because I know a lot of people don't have a very strong attention span, and I get that because I'm very similar. But so anyways, I would love for you to join me. I'm not gonna be doing 30 days of content on YouTube. I'm gonna be doing a couple really beautiful videos over the course of the next 30 days. But for the next 30 days, I'm gonna be doing 30 days of highly sensitive people content. So come on over to my Instagram, join me there, and there'll be some videos, there'll be some written content, some stuff to engage with as far as learning about your highly sensitive nature and how to turn it into a strength. That's what this whole thing is about. And then of course, I love when people share, engage with me, leave in the comments below, what do you relate to out of this video? I know a lot of the highly sensitive people out there, you follow my work. The anxious people, you follow my work. The people with low self-worth, you follow my work, because you're following the transformation that I'm making within myself, because you feel that energy. You're gravitating towards it because you resonate with me. So I want to know your story. Share it with me, please. Or just even little tidbits of it. You don't need to share your whole story. Just share little pieces with me. I love that. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to creating some more of these videos for you guys so you can learn more about your sensitive nature. All right, take care.